Okay. Thanks. Put these out, correct?
They were already on there, but something like this.
Okay. Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Veeravadadhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanarandana Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Veeravadadhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Vrajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Hari Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajakatam Jashto Saraswata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Jai Gaur Premanandi All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by Srila Prabhupada, Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, chapter 24, chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva, today's text number 73. Devayam noditak sarve.
Devayam noditak sarve.
Prajasarge Prajeshvara.
Prajasarge Prajeshvara.
Anena dhasat Anena Dvasta Tamasa
Anena Dvasta Tamasa
Sisrikshmo Vividhat Praja
Shishrishmo Vividaja
Devayang Noditak Sarve
Devayam Noditasare
Prajasarge Prajeshvara
Jasarge Prajeshvara
Anena Dvasta Tamasa
Anena Dvasta Tamasa
Sisrikshmo Shmo Vividhat Praja
Shishrishmo Vividaja
Devayang Noditak Sarve
Devayam Noditasare
Prajasarge Prajeshvara
Jasarge Prajeshvara
Anena Dvasta Tamasa
Anena Dvasta Tamasa
Sisrikshmo Vividhat Praja
Shishrishmo Vividaja
Jen?
Devayam nodita sarve,
Devayam Noditasare
Raja sarge praveshvaraha,
Jasarge Prajeshvara
Anena dvasta karmasaha,
Anena Dvasta Tamasa
Sisrikshmo vivida prajaha,
Shishrishmo Vividha Praja Devayam Noditasare
Devayam nodita sarve,
Jasarge Prajeshvara
Raja sarge praveshvaraha,
Anena Dvasta Tamasa
Anena dvasta tamasaha,
Srisrikshmo Vividha Praja
Sisrikshmo vivida prajaha.
Anyone else? Okay. Word for word. Te, by him. Vayam, all of us. Noditaha, ordered. Sarve, all. Praja sarge, at the time of creating population.
At the time of creating population,
Praja Ishvaraha,
Praja Ishvara,
the controllers of all living entities.
the controllers of all living entities.
Anena,
Anena,
by this.
by this,
Dvasta Tamasaha,
Dvasta Tamasa,
being freed from all kinds of ignorance.
being free from all kinds of ignorance.
Sisrikshmaha,
Srisrikshma,
we created.
we created.
Vividhaha,
Vividha,
various kinds of.
various kinds of
Prajaha,
Praja,
living entities.
living entities.
So this is Lord Shiva continuing. Translation. When all the Prajapatis were ordered to create by Lord Brahma, we chanted these prayers in praise of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and became completely free from all ignorance. Thus, we were able to create different types of living entities. Please repeat. When all the Prajapatis were ordered
When all the Prajapatis were ordered
to create by Lord Brahma,
to create by Lord Brahma,
we chanted these prayers in praise
we chanted these prayers in praise
of the Supreme Personality of Godhead
of the Supreme Personality of God
and became completely free from all ignorance.
and became completely free from all ignorance.
Thus, we were able to create
Thus, we were able to create
different types of living entities.
different types of living entities.
Srila Prabhupada's purport. In this verse, we can understand that the various types of living entities were created simultaneously at the very beginning of the creation. The nonsensical Darwinian theory of evolution is not applicable here. It is not that intelligent human beings did not exist millions of years ago. On the contrary, it is understood that the most intelligent creature, Lord Brahma, was first created. Then Lord Brahma created other saintly sages like Marichi, Bhrigu, Atreya, Vasishta, and Lord Shiva. They in their turn created different types of bodies according to karma. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila Dev told his mother that the living entity gets a particular type of body in accordance with his work, and that this body is decided upon by higher authorities. The higher authorities, as appointed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are Lord Brahma and all other Prajapatis and Manus. Thus, from the beginning of creation, it can be seen that the first creature is the most intelligent. It is not that so-called modern intelligence has developed by the gradual process of evolution. As stated in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, there is a gradual evolutionary process, but it is not the body that is evolving. All the bodily forms are already there. It is the spiritual entity or spiritual spark within the body that is being promoted by the laws of nature under the supervision of superior authority. We can understand from this verse that from the very beginning of creation, different varieties of living entities were existing. It is not that some of them have become extinct. Everything is there. It is due to our lack of knowledge that we cannot see things in their proper perspective. In this verse, the word dhasta tamasaha is very important, for without being free of ignorance, one cannot control the creation of different types of living entities. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31:1, Daivanetrena, bodies are awarded under the supervision of superior powers. How can these superior powers control the evolutionary process of the living entity if they are not free from all imperfection? The followers of the Vedic instructions cannot accept the Darwinian theory of evolution, for it is marred by imperfect knowledge. Prabhupada ki. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshur Miritam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master is kindly opening my eyes with the torch of knowledge. Now, for my respectful obeisances unto him. So, yesterday's verse and today's verse, Lord Shiva's, before he gives what is called the Shruti Phal, or the benefit of hearing the song that he's sung, he's giving a little history. He's stepping back and giving a little history about these prayers. And just like yesterday's verse, that was the first history verse, it said, this prayer was first spoken to us by Lord Brahma. So Lord Shiva didn't make up this. He didn't ad-lib or improvise this song. He heard it from Lord Brahma. This prayer was first spoken to us by Lord Brahma, the master of all creators. The creators, headed by Bhrigu, were instructed in these prayers because they wanted to create. So by their karma, they're very pious beings endowed with supernatural powers. But we saw in the third canto how they produce all kinds of different species. Ordinarily, when we mate, we just produce a human being. But these Prajapatis, populators of the universe, they can, by their mystic power, they're specifically endowed with those powers to create the different kinds of bodies. And they wanted to, they had that desire, and they are qualified to have those desires fulfilled. So they were given this, like Bhrigu and the Prajapatis, they were given the song to chant. And then today, again, when all the Prajapatis were ordered to create by Lord Brahma, we chanted these prayers. We, Lord Shiva is saying, we, all the Devas, the Prajapatis, the Manus, we chanted these prayers in praise of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and became completely free from all ignorance. Sometimes Prabhupada, when he said the word ignorance, he would spin it as ignorance. Ignore. Ignorance is not a passive thing. When he would say ignorance, he was making the point that we're deliberately ignoring Krishna. So you can't be in ignorance or ignorance when you're praising the Lord, because you're praising Him like that directly. So that's the effect of chanting these prayers, that you become qualified because you're completely situated in God consciousness. Thus, we were able to create different types of living entities. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So this history that Lord Shiva was describing, this primeval, it describes this primeval history, before so-called recorded history, gives it's extolling the virtue of the descending process of knowledge. By chanting these prayers, the Prajapatis became completely free from all ignorance. Thus, we were able. Okay, yeah. If we want to know anything, we have to approach an authority. When my godbrother Bharadraj, who was an expert artist, many of the paintings you see in Prabhupada's books are done by him, or at least designed by him, and then the artist went with his design, and then, first they checked it with Prabhupada, and then he said, yes, this is a good design. Because Prabhupada would just say, do this, but how to do it? Paint the Krishna and the gopis, rasa dancing, but how to do that? Or paint what it was like when Yashoda looked in the mouth of Krishna, who had been accused of eating dirt. So Bharadraj Prabhu was often the mastermind of how to show this. But then of course he sent his plan to Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada said, yes, this is very good. Do like this. Or he would say, no, this is not very good. Do it like this. Okay. So yeah, anything requires, even to tie our shoes, we have to have an authority. Our mother generally teaches us how to tie our shoes. So that's how real knowledge comes. It comes from superior intelligence. Today's purport, Prabhupada reveals the solution is there. Will devolve. He comes from Bhagavatam. As Prabhupada says, Vishnu did not have to take help of Lakshmi. If we want to have offspring, we have to mate and produce an offspring. But Vishnu, as the Christians say, he's Brahma. He's begotten directly of the Father, like they say of Lord Jesus, right? So Brahma, he's begotten directly of Lord Vishnu, and didn't know who he was or where he was, but he's the most qualified person for the post. He immediately went into meditation, and after 1,000 celestial years, he heard the syllables ta pa. He was given the clue of what he had to do. He had to do tapasya, and that's what we're meant to actually do in the human form of life, do tapasya. So he was given that too. So Prabhupada, he's saying that we devolve from Brahma, and this is in contradiction to Darwin's theory of ascending evolution, Darwin's theory is based on the fallacy that life arises from matter, then evolves into higher life forms. Vedic evolution is based on the fact that life is eternal. matter, it's coming and it's always morphing. Like this body, it came into being. My parents made it, and then just described in the third canto what happens. The semina and the ovum unite, and then there's holes. Right? At first, it's just like a little pea, Prabhupada said, and then it develops holes, and they become the gates of the body, and then etc. like that. So, but I existed somewhere, before that happened. Consciousness, life is eternal. And that individual souls inhabit different life forms designed by higher beings to satisfy our desires to enjoy the material world. So there's a famous verse, third canto 331:1, which affirms what Prabhupada is saying. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Karmana Daiva Netrena Jantur Deho Papattaye Striyat Pravishta Udaram Pungso Reta Kanashraya. The personality of Godhead said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. So Prabhupada would make the point, if consciousness isn't primal, isn't the main thing, then what explains the different levels of consciousness? Why is someone awarded a very intelligent body, very strong body, very beautiful body, and somebody else is born, takes shelter of a cockroach body like that? It's because of karma. Karmana daiva netrena. So that's the fact. Now in Srimad Bhagavatam purports, and by his spoken word also, Srila Prabhupada suggested that Darwin was aware of Vedic literatures. You can go on the database and do a word search for Darwin, and you'll see how where Prabhupada talks about where Darwin got his ideas. And he said that, you see, the British and the Germans, especially in the 19th century, they were into Vedic literature. Max Muller in Germany, and the Brits. Sir William Jones was the first one. Of course, it wasn't as it is, but they were introduced to different, the West was introduced to different concepts. So Prabhupada said that Darwin was aware of literatures like the Padma Purana and the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, but Darwin rejected God. So he had, and you know why he rejected God? He rejected God because he saw so much evil and suffering in the world. So he thought, how could an intelligent designer do that? What intelligent designer would create so much suffering? But it's not the designer's fault. And of course, he just saw just this material creation. He didn't see that, he thought that there was the whole thing. But the material creation is simply the prison portion of the creation. It's where rebellious living entities are sent to act out, we're sent here to act out our fantasies of being the controller and the enjoyer. So there is an intelligent designer, and that intelligent designer is awarding us bodies just commensurate with our desires and what we deserve. As Prabhupada says in the one Gita purport, the Lord fulfills the desires of the living entities and as much as they deserve, and not to the extent that they may covet. I may want the moon, or I might want to be a millionaire, but maybe that's not my karma in this life. Whereas somebody else, even without endeavoring too much, you hear Prabhupada say this too, I have practical experience that I had a friend, and he always made money, even in hard times. And other people, they work so hard and then they can barely make ends meet. So why? It's according to the results of our past deeds. Yeah. Therefore, Darwin imagined a material theory of evolution ascending from matter to simple life to complex life. Yet Prabhupada boldly challenged scientists to create, okay, so you accept Darwinian evolution, now you create life from matter and explain consciousness. And as Akandadi Prabhu pointed out when he was last here, they really have a problem now because through all their attempts to reduce life to matter, they haven't been able to explain consciousness. Although they've been able to, they keep saying it just arises at a mature combination of chemicals. The Prophet said, okay, well, here are the chemicals. Here are the chemicals. Or what's the difference between a living body and a dead body? So now you put the right chemicals in that dead body and you produce consciousness. But it's not. Consciousness is a symptom of spirit. It's a different category of energy. Okay, so I'm thinking, I just want to tie it in with current event. We had an election last night. So the tie-in is that if we think life comes from matter, and that is just, Darwinian evolution just accepted as fact in the media, pretty much. Unless you have some, religious media. But it's pretty much accepted as like unquestioned. And people who don't accept evolution, Darwinian evolution, there's something wrong with it. There's something, but it's a theory that's actually been debunked even by Darwinists, original Darwinists. Now they have neo-Darwinists because they say, well, Darwin couldn't account for that. But actually, evolutionists still can't account for consciousness. It's still, as Niels Bohr, the physicist, said, in our attempts to reduce life to particles, to material particles, somehow consciousness has slipped through our fingers. This is a quote on the back of the BPT book, Consciousness, the Missing Link. Yeah, it's a good quote. So, but if we accept the verdict of materialists, in academia and in the media, and that we're all just matter, and the purpose of life is to enjoy this material world, then what's the result? Well, the result is okay. Bhagavatam. The result is described in the Bhagavatam. 2.3.19. Shvavid varahostra karai samstuta purusha pushu nayat karna patopito jatvanama gadavrataha. This is Shonaka Rishi to Sutta Goswami. Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. So when a society thinks that the goal of life is sense gratification, sooner or later, and it's happening right now, it already happened, it's just going to elect the biggest dog, hog, camel, or ass. Now, 100 years ago, this was even predicted. We don't even have to go to Shonaka Rishi. This was predicted by an American newspaper pundit named H.L. Mencken. Anybody ever heard of H.L. Mencken? Yeah, in the 20s. He used to work for the Baltimore Sun. Now listen to this. He's describing what has just happened 100 years ago. He predicted, actually. Quote, when a candidate for public office faces the voters, he does not face men of sense. Macon was famous for saying, he said, the public is an ass. That's what Shonagarishi said too. He does not face men of sense. He faces a mob of men. Look what happened almost 4 years ago, right? The headline on the New York Times, the headline after the election was, Trump storms back to the White House. Because storms was a verb used for what happened on January 6, 2021. They stormed the Capitol. Trump's mob stormed the Capitol. Okay, so Mencken said, this is back in the 20s. He faces a mob of men whose chief distinguishing mark is the fact that they are quite incapable of weighing ideas or even of comprehending any ideas save the most elemental. Men whose whole thinking is done in terms of emotion and whose dominant emotion is dread of what they cannot understand. Our president-elect, his whole pitch was based on stoking fear. That was his whole thing. Fear. Dread of what they cannot understand. So confronted, the candidate must either bark with the pack or be lost. That's exactly what happened to his party. They barked along with him. They were afraid of him. All the odds are on the man who is intrinsically the most devious and mediocre. That's the best bet for who's going to win. The man who can most adeptly disperse the notion that his mind is a virtual vacuum. He's an airhead. And this is what, most of in Trump's first term, this is what most of the people who were part of his cabinet did. They left. Rex Tillerson, his first Secretary of State, before, what's his name? I forget. The other guy, who was chosen by Trump to be Secretary of State because he had been the CEO of Exxon. Rex Tillerson, and they're going to choose the big businessman to be the secretary because he said we got to run this place like a business, right? So Tillerson finally quit when he realized that Trump wasn't going to listen but Tillerson took it seriously. He studied what it was going to take to be a Secretary of State. He studied up on it and he tried to really play the part. And then he's tried to give the best advice he could to Trump. And then Trump wouldn't listen to him because Trump had his agenda. And so Tillerson finally quit, saying famously, this guy is an effing idiot. The man who can most adeptly disperse the notion, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz, that his mind is a virtual vacuum. The presidency tends year by year to go to such men. This is back in the 20s, he's saying. As democracy is perfected, the office, and this is the demon crazy that Nero was referring to, that Prabhu would talk about. As democracy is perfected, the office represents more and more closely the inner soul of the people. Of course, not the soul proper, but the inner, what the soul has become conditioned by tamagun. We move toward a loft, and this is where Mencken was a great satirist. So listen to this. He's making fun now. We move toward a lofty ideal, On some great and glorious day, the plain folks of this land will reach their heart's desire at last, and the White House will be adorned by a downright moron. He predicted this. He said this in 1924 in an editorial for the Baltimore Sun. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we can't be dogs, hogs, camels, and asses, but now that we've elected one, again, for the second time, it's more obvious than ever that our leader is divine grace, right? As Prabhupada wrote about his own spiritual master. Darkness around, all untrace, our only hope is divine grace. We can only really see our way clear through his everlasting Vani. And of course, that was always the case, whoever's in office, but especially when ignorance is so thick that things like this happen. What are they saying? What is that saying? Once burned, twice shy. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So, Hare Krishna. Okay, I'll read the verse again, and if you have any questions or comments, the only hope is divine grace. Lord Shiva is saying, when all the Prajapatis were ordered to create by Lord Brahma, we chanted these prayers in praise of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yes, not dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. And became completely free from all ignorance. Thus we were able to create different types of living entities. Yeah, different types. Because of different desires, we have to get different bodies to fulfill those desires. Porpoise bodies, human bodies, ant bodies. Okay, any questions or comments? I thought Chris would have something to say. Yes.
Do you think that Trump getting in office it could be the result of the country's collective karma from all the slaughterhouses? And,
Yeah, Prabhupada would say things like that.
And breweries and brothels and just,
yes,
you know.
50 years ago when Prabhupada was still walking among us. 50 years ago was what, 20 years, 1974. So devotees would ask him, why is America so prosperous? So much cow slaughter, so much abortion. So, it wasn't completely out of Vietnam yet. Which was just not Dharma Yuddha, it was Adharma Yuddha. It was an unrighteous battle. Prabhupada, he would say, just wait. You are prosperous now because in the past you were more God conscious. And now, yes, you're burning up your good karma. So if you don't generate, if you don't act righteously again, just wait. And I don't know about you, but in my lifetime, I've seen America go down.
Oh.
Down. I mean, look at the level of discourse we just had in the politics. It was worse. It's worse. And in the universities, I mean, this is where people are supposedly being educated, but they're not. They're just being misled. That's what Prabhupada called them slaughterhouses. Of course, you can go to university and get a degree and use it rightly too, to spread Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Yes, Chris.
Let's. I've heard recently from some people who come to the restaurant and are interested in the temple and stuff, who are academics, that academic research is being faked. So people are publishing papers and they're just making up stuff and they're not really doing the experimental work to back up their claims. And then other people are quoting their papers and depending on their fictitious conclusions to support their own fake work.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in the high levels of research, like what the CDC depends on to deal with COVID and stuff and cancer.
Yes. Well, this is, I mean, if you've ever read Human Devolution by Prabhu, about just this fact that life comes from life and that the most intelligent being in the universe is the first one, Lord Brahma, is like Prabhupada said, and that we all devolve. Human beings are not, the latest and greatest version of evolution. We're actually down there. We're in the middle. So he would point out, because he's done a lot of research into this too, because he's popular on the alternative academic circuit, where people who know that there's a lot of fakery and falsity going on in the academy. He's done research into this, and this was going on in the 19th century, that people were faking things. And Piled Down Man, that was a big one in the early 20s. Yeah, it's just there is a lot of fakery and hoax going on supposedly in high science, but people we're driven in Kali Yuga by a desire for name and fame and fortune. So when Forbidden Archaeology came out by Sariputta and Dhruva, it was really attacked by the traditionalists, by the Leakeys in paleontology, for example. And they said, this is nonsense. Everyone knows that evolution is a fact. And so Dhruva and Sariputta said, we knew that this was significant, when we were attacked by them, because they don't want this. This is a threat to them. So, yeah. Anyway, darkness around, all untraced, the only hope is divine grace. And Prabhupada, he would tell his scientist devotees, look, I'm a layman. You're trained in science. So it's up to you. I'm telling you the basic ideas from the Shastra, from the Puranas and Bhagavatam. But you can talk their jargon. You can prove in their own terms that life comes from life, and that consciousness can't be reduced to anything material. So it's really up to the followers of this divine grace to fight the good fight and carry on and expose cheating and illusion. But you have to be qualified to do that. It's not that any devotee can just step into a science conference and not come out looking like a fool. You have to know your stuff. Okay. Anything else? Varanga.
Yeah, this is a little off track, but you said this in the beginning in class about Prabhupada saying ignorance. So from what I understand, there's a difference between ignorance and nescience, right? Because ignorance is that you know it, but you're ignoring it. And nescience is you have no clue of it, right?
Yeah, but Prabhupada is saying that, that's true, but Prabhupada is saying ignorance, or nescience is the same thing, ignorance, is not passive. The reason we're ignorant is because we don't want to see God. We don't want to know God. Like that famous story my godbrother Kishore from Scotland tells. That when a lady came to Edinburgh in Scotland, and she used to come a lot, and she would always come, and she was very opinionated and very feisty, but she would always come, So Prabhupada came to Edinburgh. On the database, you'll see the lecture, and you can even hear it. And so she stood up. And so Prabhupada said, any questions? He gave a talk. And then she said, yes. Do you see God? Do you see God? Kishore is telling the story because he was there. Really challenging Prabhupada, you know. Do you see God? So Prabhupada always, he would not only answer a person's, you know, the content of a question, he would answer the intent. He knew the question behind the question that she was challenging, right? So Prabhupada took this tack. Here's how he answered it. He just became very childlike. And he said, you don't see God? You don't see God? And then she was like totally disarmed because she was ready for a fight, you know. And so Prabhupada is like, you don't see God? And then she didn't know what to say. She just stood there. She kept standing up. She stood there. And then there was a long pause. And then Prabhupada hit her with this one. Do you want to see God? And she looked down and she shook her head. It was like Prabhupada challenged her. And she realized, no, I don't. It's okay. And then Prabhupada became like a lion. Therefore, you do not see God, because you don't want to see God. God's everywhere. You can see him in the light of the sun, the light of the moon. He's in your heart. Super soul. Sometimes it's equated with conscience. Prabhupada, he equated the super soul with the conscience of our better angel, our better self. So, yeah. So our ignorance is not simply something that's been imposed on us. If we're ignorant, it's because we don't want to see Krishna. And the more we don't want to see Krishna, the more we're buried in ignorance. Whereas a devotee, even if we're coming from ignorant backgrounds, we want to see God. We want to be like Prabhupada. We want to see him everywhere, face to face. So we're being wakened up. Okay. So I think it starts tomorrow with, yes. Now we're going to start the Shruti Fal. Starting tomorrow through, I think verse 78 is where it finally ends. We're going to see, 79, where the result, the benefit of being absorbed in the song that Lord Shiva and the Prajapatis heard, and now he's giving it to the Prachetas for them to meditate on. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Very nice class, Prabhuji.